Happy Lag BaOmer. I want to share with you some thoughts on the horrible tragedy happened in Miron last night. You know, yesterday I was sitting here in my office in New York, and my heart was in Miron. You know, when I was studying in yeshiva in Kfar Chabad as a teenager, and for years afterwards, I used to go every single year to Miron. It was the place to be. Such holiness, such beauty. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So even yesterday here in New York, in my office, I had a live screening of YouTube of the happenings at Miron, and I felt so part of it. There's even a guy who texted me while I was watching it. So I said, "Oh, you're in Israel. Why don't you go to Miron?" And I encouraged him to go to Miron. And then the terrible, horrible, senseless tragedy. How are we to make sense of this? So the first thing we do when we have this kind of tragedy is we ask why. And we try and make sense of it. We try explain, we try understand why God did this, what he wants. Those are our first thoughts always when it comes to tragedy. So I want to share with you a story from the Talmud. Let me put it up on the screen so you can see it. This is from the tractate Menachot. And look at the story. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav said in the name of Rav, B'shah she'ala Moshe Maron, when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven. So this is when he went to receive the Torah, when he was on the mountain of Sinai. Moses himself, the leader, the great leader, went to the mountain of Sinai. So he went, So he went La Marom. Let me stick this up over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven. And he said, so he found God doing something phenomenal. What was God doing? God was tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. So on top of each letter on the Torah are crowns. So there's specific crowns. So he found God tying these crowns, you know. So Moses says to God, Master of the universe, why is it that you're not giving the Torah now with these additions, with these little crowns on top? HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, God told him, Adam echad yesh. There's a man, she'atid liyot besof kama dorot. There's a man who's going to live in the future. Akiva ben Yosef Shemoy, and his name is Akiva ben Yosef, which is this famous Rabbi Akiva, who was the teacher of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. She'atid lidrosh al kol kotz v'kotz tilin v'tinich nalachot. He in the future, when he lives, he will basically expound and teach and derive from every one of these crowns which are on top of the Torah. Amar lefanav, so Moses says to God, Ribono shel olam, hareuli, Master of the universe, God, I want to see this guy. I want to see this Akiva guy who's going to live. So, Amar lo chazor lachacha, halach v'yashav besof shmona shivot v'lo hayodea ma'aynu omerim. So he told him, go there, and basically Moses sat in Rabbi Akiva's study hall, and Moses didn't understand what Rabbi Akiva was teaching. Right? Rabbi Akiva, who would live later on, thousands of years later, Moses didn't know in his study hall what is he teaching. So it says that Moses' strength waned, tashash kocho. Okay, and then so this when Rabbi Akiva arrived at this discussion of one of these things, his student said to him, Rabbi Akiva, where do you know this from? So he said, it's halacha leMoshe Rabbeinu miSinai. I know it from Moshe Rabbeinu. So basically, Moses looked at Rabbi Akiva and he saw a tremendous man, incredible human being, incredible person. So Moses went back to God. So Moses said to God, you have such a powerful, incredible, spiritual human being, and I'm giving the Torah? Let Rabbi Akiva give the Torah. Moses, the humblest of all men, when he sees somebody who's such a great scholar that he doesn't even understand his lecture, give the Torah through Rabbi Akiva. So God says to Moses the following words, Amar lo shtok. God said to him, be quiet. This is my intention. That's it. Now listen carefully to the end of the story. Amar lefanav, Moses said to him, Ribono shel olam, haritanu torato. Areini scharo. You showed me his Torah. Great. Show me his reward. Show me what's going to happen with Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva was one of the 10 martyrs that were killed by the Romans. We read about the story on Yom Kippur in the Musaf. So Moses sees how Rabbi Akiva's flesh was literally combed. The Romans combed his flesh, and they killed him in a terrible and horrible, horrible, horrible death. So Amar Lefanav, Moses sees this incredible, immense scholar who's getting this terrible, terrible, terrible punishment. God Almighty, this is Torah, this is its reward. God said to him, be quiet, this is my intention. It's a very powerful story. And what are we to learn from it? See, when it comes to tragedy, when it comes to something that happened in Miron, the answer is, there is no answer. Just this week, somebody close to me in the community passed away from COVID-19, and his kids were there. And his kids asked me while he was suffering. One of his daughters came over to me and she said to me from the bottom of her heart, "Rabbi, why is my father suffering?" And I felt a connection with her. I felt a deep connection with her, and I felt the pain, and almost cried myself. And I said to her, "I have no idea. I do not know why God is doing this to you." And over during this last week, the family kept on asking me the question. And again, I said, I don't know. I have no words. When Aharon HaKohen's 2 children died, all he answered was, Vayidom Aharon. But while we have no words and we don't know the answers, and the images coming out all the time, we read about more another child dying and another person who was trampled to death, and a singer from Montreal, and the names are coming out of the Kaddish, and the images are so horrific. I, together with Am Yisrael, feel the pain. How could it be on Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's yahrzeit, this holy man? Kedayu Rabbi Shimon ismoch alav. We feel so much pain, but at the same time, we know that what needs to be done is that we need to increase our love for each other. Ahavat chinam. That was the theme of Lag BaOmer, which is just loving one another. So while we don't know the answers, and while we feel immense pain, and like God told Rabbi Akiva, Moshe Rabbeinu himself about Rabbi Akiva, Shtok, be quiet. You won't understand it. You won't answer. And this is also the story of Rabbi Akiva himself. You see, Rabbi Akiva we all know the story that at the age of 40 years old, he was illiterate, and then he married the daughter of Kalba ben Savua, and he subsequently went to study Torah for 24 years, amassing 24,000 students. Rabbi Akiva was able to amass 24,000 students, and these 24,000 students died from a plague during Sfirat HaOmer, which is why we don't listen to music, which is why we're so sad. So Rabbi Akiva saw his life's work dead in front of him. He was shattered. He was heartbroken. He was crying. Rabbi Akiva, his beloved students, he loved them. He taught them. He raised them. They died. What did Rabbi Akiva do? He says, I have no answers. I don't know, God, why you do this horrible, senseless tragedy, but I know what needs to be done. We don't stop. He got up the next morning and he went to find 5 more students to transmit the Torah to them. 5 incredible students, which the Mishnah mentions. One of them was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and he taught them the entire Torah. If Rabbi Akiva would have given up and said, I just don't understand, the Torah would have been forgotten. But he amassed these students and he taught, and one of them was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, whose yahrzeit we celebrate to mark today. And I'll just finish off with one more story. In the 1960s, there was a horrible, senseless terrorist attack where terrorists broke into Kfar Chabad, and there was a school there where they killed a teacher and a couple of students. And Kfar Chabad then was just an up-and-coming settlement, so to speak, where Jews, mostly from Russia, and these Jews had fought the KGB, they had fought Stalin to preserve Torah, and they'd come to Israel to fulfill their dreams, and they thought they'd be safe. And now this horrible, senseless tragedy happened in Israel. They were heartbroken. And they sent a letter to the Rebbe in Crown Heights, in Brooklyn, the telegram. And they were walking around like zombies, like so much pain. These were people who had been killed. A tragedy. A terrorist attack in central Israel. For 3 days, there was no answer from the Rebbe's office. And later on, the Rebbe said the reason why there was no answer is because, like Aharon, when he lost his children, Vayidom Aharon, he was silent. There's just no answer. And then the Rebbe wrote back 3 days later, he wrote 3 words in a telegram. With rebuilding, you will be comforted. As Jews, what we need to do now more than anything else is acts of love. Ahavat chinam, love each other. Whether you are religious, irreligious, conservative, reform, orthodox, makes no difference. We are all children of God, and we need to love each other and embrace the message of Lag BaOmer, which is to transmit the Torah to everybody we love, to cherish it. Ahavat chinam. May we all be comforted, and may God, Umacha Hashem Elokim dim'am al kol parei, may God erase any tears from us and bring Mashiach, which is the ultimate form of comfort. Shabbat Shalom and happy Lag BaOmer.